The cell block was unusually silent for a Friday night. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting long shadows across the narrow corridors. In the far corner, a group of inmates lounged on benches, their eyes sharp, filled with a predatory hunger. They had heard whispers about the new guy in cell 12, Manny Pacquiao. Some said he was just another lightweight fighter, someone who'd crumble under pressure. But tonight, they wanted to test him. "Hey, new guy," one of them sneered, stepping out from the shadows. His face was scarred, a testament to years surviving prison life the hard way. "Cell 12, right? Heard you talk big. Let's see if you can back it up." Manny didn't flinch. He was sitting calmly on the edge of his cot, tying the laces of his worn sneakers. His eyes didn't wander. They locked onto the leader with a quiet intensity that made the gang hesitate for a fraction of a second, just enough for tension to thicken the air. Another inmate stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "You don't get it, huh? In here, we make the rules. And tonight, you're gonna learn your place." The sound of his knuckles echoed against the metal bars, a chilling rhythm that sent small shivers down the spines of anyone watching. The leader grinned, revealing yellowed teeth. "Looks like he's got some fire. I like that. But fire burns, little man. And it can burn you too." He leaned closer, his face inches from Manny's, his breath stale with a mixture of sweat and cheap cigarettes. Manny's hands rested calmly on his knees. Not a flicker of fear crossed his face. "I'm not here to fight," he said, voice low but steady. "I just want to do my time in peace." The words barely landed before the first laugh rang out, cruel, mocking, filled with overconfidence. "Peace," one of the gang members sneered. "In here, peace is for the weak. And you're about to find out what happens to weaklings." They circled him like wolves around a trapped deer. The other inmates stepped back, sensing the rising danger. You could almost hear the heartbeat of the room, heavy, uneven, vibrating with anticipation. Manny's calm, unassuming posture only seemed to fuel the gang's arrogance. They had done this 1,000 times: intimidate, scare, dominate. They expected compliance. Submission. A quivering apology. "Move over," the leader barked, shoving Manny slightly. "Let's see if your punches are as big as your mouth. Show us what you got." A flicker of amusement touched Manny's lips, just barely noticeable. He didn't move. He didn't react. The silence stretched, suffocating, as the gang members exchanged puzzled glances. This wasn't going as planned. Their confidence wavered, just for a heartbeat. Then the leader stepped closer, his voice a whisper of threat. "You think you're untouchable? That calm act of yours, it won't save you. Not here. Not with us." Manny finally looked up, his gaze unwavering. It wasn't fear in his eyes. Not arrogance either. It was the kind of calm that made people pause, that made adrenaline spike and doubt creep into the hearts of the boldest men. The room seemed to shrink around him. No one moved. No one dared speak. Even the air felt heavier, charged with tension, waiting for something inevitable. The gang thought they had control. Thought they were about to break a man who didn't belong. But they didn't know, they had no idea what they were walking into. The morning sun barely pierced the thick, barred windows of Block C, the oldest section of the prison. Its concrete walls were chipped and gray, graffiti etched into every surface telling stories of past violence, dominance, and broken lives. The air was thick with a metallic scent of iron from the bars, mixed with the faint smell of sweat, damp laundry, and institutional disinfectant. Every footstep echoed against the hard floors, magnifying even the smallest sound. Inmates moved with purpose, some heading to the cafeteria, others to the yard, but a group of them lingered near the entrance of cell 12, where the new inmate, Manny Pacquiao, had been quietly placed just yesterday. They leaned against walls, smirking, cracking jokes that carried a sharp edge of menace. Their laughter bounced off the walls, blending with the distant clang of doors and the faint, occasional shout from guards who barely looked up from their patrols. The leader, a broad man with a shaved head and a scar running down his left cheek, pushed through the crowd. "Looks like the newbie's still breathing," he said, loud enough for others to hear, his tone dripping with mockery. "I don't know why he even thinks he can survive in here." He motioned for the others to gather closer. "Come on," he said, voice low but menacing. "Let's give him a proper welcome. Show him how things work. Manny sat on the edge of his cot, barely noticeable. His back straight, hands resting on his knees, eyes scanning the room with calm precision. He didn't fidget, didn't react to the whispers or the stares. His presence was quiet, almost invisible, a man who refused to play the role of the scared newcomer. The gang members circled him slowly, like predators analyzing their prey. Each step they took echoed in the hollow corridor, punctuated by the occasional metallic clang of chains. One of them laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Hey, Manny boy, you ever get in a fight before?" he jeered. "Or are you gonna cry the minute someone touches you?" Manny's lips curved slightly into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Not enough to show arrogance, but enough to unnerve those around him. Silence hung heavy for a second, just long enough to make the gang members exchange uneasy glances. "Don't get smart with me," the leader snapped. He leaned forward, pointing a thick finger at Manny's chest. "You think sitting there like a statue makes you tough? Tough doesn't come from standing still. It comes from surviving, and you? You're new meat. Fresh blood. Easy target." The corridor filled with low chuckles, the kind that were meant to intimidate. One inmate stepped closer, shoving Manny's shoulder. "Move it, freak. Stand up, or we'll make you stand the hard way." But Manny didn't move. He remained seated, calm and collected, almost as if he were invisible. His eyes didn't shift with panic, nor did they flash with anger. Instead, they held a quiet intensity, like a coiled spring waiting for the right moment to release its energy. The tension in the air grew heavier with every passing second. A younger inmate, probably trying to impress the others, leaned in closer. "Man, he's not even scared. This is gonna be fun." He grinned, revealing crooked teeth, and cracked his knuckles again. "Comment down below if you think he's about to fight back. I say he's gonna crumble." The leader laughed, slapping the young man on the back. "Not just gonna crumble. We're gonna break him. Show him who's boss. Everyone in this block knows. Disrespect us, and you pay the price." But Manny remained still. Calm. Unshaken. The more the gang tried to provoke him, the more their own frustration began to bubble up. It was as if their actions, intended to dominate, were somehow futile. Each shove, each insult, each sneer bounced off an invisible shield around him. One of the older inmates, watching from a nearby bench, whispered to a friend, "I've seen a lot in here, but something about him, it doesn't feel right. Watch him carefully." The gang, oblivious to the warning, continued their intimidation. They laughed louder, circled tighter, and spoke in sharper, more threatening tones. The leader's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "You think this is a joke, huh? You think just sitting there makes you untouchable? Not here. Not in my block." Manny's calm gaze finally lifted to meet the leader's eyes. Not a word. Not emotion. Just stillness. The silence was deafening. Even the guards passing by seemed to sense the tension, slowing their steps. The moment stretched. The gang, confident a moment ago, now felt an unfamiliar unease creeping in. They had expected fear, submission, perhaps even a plea. Instead, they got calm. Unwavering. Silent defiance. And in that tense stillness, the audience could almost hear it, the calm before the storm, the heartbeat before action. Manny Pacquiao wasn't just a new inmate. He was a presence that commanded attention without making a sound. They were about to find out the hard way. The tension in Cell Block C had reached a boiling point. The gang that had surrounded Manny earlier now closed in tighter, like predators circling a cornered prey, except this prey did not flinch. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed, flickering with an ominous rhythm as if echoing the growing threat in the room. "All right, new guy," the leader said, stepping right in front of Manny, his shadow falling over him. "Time to show us what you're made of. Stand up, talk, do something. Or we'll do it for you." He cracked his knuckles deliberately, the sound sharp and jarring, bouncing off the concrete walls. One of the younger gang members leaned closer, his face twisted in a cruel grin. "Yeah, man. Don't just sit there like some statue. Are you scared or stupid?" He shoved Manny lightly on the shoulder, enough to jolt the muscles, but Manny didn't react. Not a twitch, not even a flinch. The leader laughed, a deep, mocking sound. "See?" He's got guts, or maybe he's just dumb. Either way, it's amusing. He glanced at his crew. Let's push him. Make him squirm. Show him who runs this block. A burly inmate stepped forward and grabbed Manny's arm, trying to drag him from the cot. Move, man. Stand up. Let's see if you can back up that calm attitude of yours. Manny slowly lifted his head, eyes meeting the assailants with a quiet intensity that made the man hesitate for a fraction of a second. The pause was brief, but enough to make the gang exchange uncertain glances. Whispered murmurs started to ripple through the cell block. He's not scared. Why isn't he moving? Something about him feels off. The leader's voice cut through the whispers. Don't listen to the noise. Stand up, freak. Show some spine, or we'll break it for you. Another gang member stepped closer, leaning into Manny's personal space. You think you can sit there, all calm and collected, while we humiliate you? Not in my block. Not ever. He let out a harsh laugh, cracking his neck aggressively. You're gonna learn fast what happens to people who don't know their place. Despite the increasing aggression, Manny remained still. His calm presence was like a wall the gang couldn't penetrate. Every shove, every insult, every sneer seemed to bounce off him. His hands rested lightly on his knees, posture perfect, eyes steady. The gang's frustration began to show, cracks appearing in their confident facades. The leader's patience snapped. He stepped forward and slammed his hand against the metal bars beside Manny, sending a loud clang echoing through the corridor. Enough of this. Stand up now, or I'll make you regret ever stepping foot in this cell. A few other inmates backed away, uneasy. Some whispered to each other nervously. Man, he's too calm. That's not normal. Watch it, guys. I don't like this. Something tells me, messing with him ain't worth it. The younger gang member, desperate to prove himself, leaned in and spat on the floor near Manny's feet. You see that? That's disrespect. You gonna do something about it, or keep acting like you're untouchable? Manny's gaze lifted slowly, and he gave the faintest of smiles. Not a smirk of arrogance, but a subtle acknowledgement, almost imperceptible. It was enough to freeze the spitting inmate in place for a heartbeat. Silence rippled through the cell block, broken only by the distant clanging of doors and the nervous coughs of other inmates. The leader's voice grew louder, strained with frustration. Move. Stand up. Show us you're not scared. Or I swear I'll... He stopped mid-threat. Manny's calm, unyielding demeanor had begun to unervingly reverse the power dynamic. The gang had expected fear, panic, hesitation, anything they could exploit. But here was nothing. Stillness. Focus. Silence. One of the older inmates, seated on a bench, whispered to a friend, eyes wide, I've seen a lot of fights here, but never a man like him. He doesn't look scared. He doesn't even look angry. It's like he's already in control. The leader slammed his fist into Manny's shoulder, enough to sting. I said stand up, he barked. But Manny did not move. Not a single muscle betrayed fear or aggression. His presence alone commanded attention, and it unnerved even the most hardened gang members. The burly inmate tried another shove, pushing Manny slightly off the cot. A ripple of murmurs ran through the surrounding prisoners. Even those who had joined the gang in intimidation hesitated now. Comment below if you think he's finally going to fight back, one whispered sarcastically, though the tension in his voice betrayed his doubt. The cell block seemed to hold its collective breath, waiting for the inevitable outburst, something to tip the scale, one way or the other. The leader gritted his teeth, fury rising. You're not human. Who sits there like that? I'm telling you, freak, you will react, or I'll make sure you regret it. But Manny remained silent. Calm. Unmovable. The arrogance of the gang, their relentless taunts and shoves, had only fueled their own frustration. They believed they were building pressure, pushing him to a breaking point. But they didn't understand one crucial truth. Stillness was his strength, patience his weapon. Every nervous whisper, every fearful glance from the surrounding inmates, every hesitant step backward from even the boldest gang member, amplified the tension. It was a silent warning. They were about to find out, too late, that this quiet man was no ordinary inmate. And in that pregnant pause, in the suffocating stillness of the cell block, The audience could feel it, the calm before the storm, the moment when arrogance meets hidden power. The gang had pushed him too far, and they had no idea what they had just unleashed. The gang laughed, loud and unrestrained, their voices bouncing off the concrete walls of the cell block. They had been so sure, so confident that this quiet newcomer would crumble under their intimidation. Their amusement was sharp, cutting through the stillness like a knife. "Look at him," one of the burly inmates sneered, nudging another. "Still sitting there like he owns the place. Can you believe this?" The leader let out a deep, booming laugh. "This is too easy. I've seen scared men, desperate men. But this? He's practically begging us to make a fool of him." He cracked his knuckles again, the sound echoing ominously. "Come on, boys. Let's have some fun before lunch. Show him how things work in my block." The younger gang members smirked, echoing the laughter, circling closer to Manny. "You're not even looking scared, huh?" one jeered. "Not even a flinch. You must be stupid, or really, really dumb." Manny remained motionless, seated calmly on the edge of his cot. But subtle movements betrayed the coiled energy beneath his composed exterior. His fists tightened slowly, almost imperceptibly, resting on his knees. His eyes narrowed, focused, scanning each member of the gang with precision. The faintest shift in his posture hinted at controlled strength, a power that hadn't yet been unleashed. The gang, oblivious to these small cues, grew more aggressive. One of the men stepped forward and grabbed Manny's shoulder roughly, attempting to yank him up. "Stand up," he barked. "Show some respect." Manny's gaze lifted, meeting the man's eyes with a kind of calm that sent a shiver down the spine of anyone watching. There was no anger, no panic, only absolute focus. A quiet confidence that didn't beg for attention, but demanded it. The gang's laughter faltered for a fraction of a second. A nervous whisper ran through the surrounding inmates. "Did you see that look? He's not scared." "Yeah," another whispered back, voice low. "Something about him. It doesn't feel right. Watch out." The leader, noticing the subtle tension spreading through his crew, waved a hand dismissively. "Don't get soft now. Laugh all you want. This guy won't break. That's the whole point. We're in control, remember." But even as he spoke, the unease was spreading. The other inmates, who had been watching from the benches and narrow corridors, began to edge away, whispers growing into murmurs. Some covered their mouths, unable to believe the calm, unwavering presence of Manny. Others shifted nervously from foot to foot. Manny's movements were minimal, almost elegant in their restraint. His fingers flexed slightly, tightening around the edge of his cot. His jaw set, not in anger, but in preparation. A subtle shift in his weight hinted at readiness, a quiet storm waiting to break. Every slight gesture sent a ripple of subconscious unease through the gang. "Relax, boys," the leader said, forcing a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "We're just having fun. Nothing to worry about. Just scare him a little, then move on." But the facade of confidence was cracking. One of the younger gang members leaned in too close, his smirk faltering. I don't like the way he's looking at me," he whispered to a friend. "Something about those eyes. It's like he's seeing everything. Every move. Every intention." Even as they tried to maintain control, the gang began to feel it, a growing weight pressing against their arrogance. Manny wasn't reacting, yes, but the stillness itself carried a message. Don't make a mistake. Don't misjudge. A small gesture sent the tension sky high. Manny adjusted his stance, leaning ever so slightly forward, hands curling into fists now just enough for the glint of tension in his forearms to be visible. It was subtle, a movement so minor that a casual observer might miss it, but it spoke volumes to anyone attuned to power, threat, and precision. The surrounding inmates noticed. Gasps slipped through the cracks of the gang's laughter. "Did you see that?" one whispered. "He's ready. Something's coming." The leader, unaware, waved off the murmurs. "You're all seeing things," he snapped, voice slightly strained. "He's just a calm kid. Doesn't mean he's dangerous." But the nervous energy was palpable. The younger gang members hesitated in their shoves and jabs, unsure if their next move would provoke a reaction they weren't ready for. The older ones, once confident, exchanged uncertain glances. Even the veteran inmates leaned in, eyes narrowing, sensing the quiet tension that preceded chaos. Manny's gaze swept across each member of the gang, taking in their stance, their movements, their arrogance. He didn't speak. He didn't move dramatically. But each subtle twitch, each tightening fist, each focused stare, amplified the unease. The silence of his strength contrasted sharply against the noisy confidence of the gang. The leader tried to regain dominance. "Enough games. We'll push him till he reacts. Then he'll know who runs this place." But the unspoken truth had already settled. This was no ordinary inmate. The gang's laughter had lost its bite. The onlookers, once passive, now leaned in, sensing the shift. And Manny remained calm, unassuming, almost invisible, yet brimming with a controlled, lethal readiness that promised the inevitable. The air in the cell block grew thicker, charged with anticipation. Every nervous whisper, every step back, every tightening jaw of the gang members signaled the moment was approaching, the storm they had no idea was coming. The audience, watching this unfold, could feel it too. The calm before the storm, the warning in subtle gestures, the quiet power that spoke louder than words. Manny Pacquiao's strength wasn't in his noise or aggression. It was in the stillness, the focus, the readiness to strike when the moment demanded. And the gang. They still laughed. But behind their bravado, fear was creeping in, silent, unstoppable, growing with every passing second. The air in the cell block was thick, heavy with tension, the gang's laughter now faltering into nervous chuckles. Manny sat, calm, composed, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. The subtle tightening of his fists, the narrowing of his eyes, had already begun to send ripples through the gang, though they had no idea just how dangerous he truly was. "Enough!" the leader barked, his voice sharp and trembling just enough to betray the crack in his confidence. "I've had it with your games. Stand up or—" Before he could finish, Manny moved. Not in a rush, not with brute force, but with a precision that froze the gang in place. His movements were almost imperceptible, smooth and calculated, like a coiled spring releasing energy at exactly the right moment. In one fluid motion, Manny leaned forward, his right fist striking with lightning speed, catching the leader off guard and knocking him back against the metal bars. The sound of impact echoed through the corridor, loud enough to silence every inmate within earshot. The gang froze, eyes wide, hearts racing. None of them had expected this calm, almost supernatural reaction. What?" stammered one of the younger gang members, stepping back instinctively. His knuckles cracked in nervous tension as he realized he was witnessing something far beyond their experience. Manny's gaze didn't waver. Calm. Focused. Deadly. "You should never underestimate silence," he said, voice low, controlled, carrying a weight that made every word feel like a warning. "It hides power you can't imagine." The second gang member lunged at him, attempting a desperate strike. Manny sidestepped with flawless timing, barely a shift in posture, then countered with a precise strike to the midsection that sent the man staggering to the ground, gasping for breath. The simplicity of the movement, the absolute efficiency of it, left the surrounding inmates frozen in awe. The cell block was silent, broken only by the soft groans of those who had just been hit. The other gang members, previously full of confidence and bravado, now stared at Manny as if he were something otherworldly. Their arrogance had dissolved in an instant, replaced by fear so raw it made their hands shake and knees weak. "Stay down," Manny said, his voice calm but authoritative. "I don't want to hurt anyone more than I have to." Another gang member, the bulliest of them all, charged recklessly, fists swinging wildly. Manny didn't even flinch. With a single pivot and measured step, he deflected the attack, his counter precise and controlled, sending the man sprawling across the concrete floor. The impact left a thud that echoed like a drumbeat of finality. The remaining gang members stumbled backward, trying to regain their balance, their confidence shattered. The silence of the cell block was absolute now. Even the whispers of onlookers had ceased. Every eye was locked on Manny. The calm that had seemed almost eerie before now radiated a kind of undeniable authority, the aura of someone who could end the conflict in seconds but chose restraint. One of the gang, shaking, whispered to another, voice barely audible, He's not human. Look at him. Look at his control. Did you see that?" The leader, now pressed against the wall, struggled to maintain composure. This isn't possible," he stammered, fear creeping into his tone. He's just an inmate, right? This can't be real. Manny's eyes swept over each of them, steady, assessing, calculating. Not a single word wasted. Power isn't loud, he said softly, almost as if teaching a lesson rather than issuing a threat. And respect isn't demanded. It's earned. Remember that next time. The gang's remaining members tried to muster aggression, but hesitation ruled their movements. Every punch, every shove they had tried moments ago now seemed laughable compared to the effortless precision of Manny's counterattacks. He moved with calm inevitability, each gesture economical yet devastating. The prison walls seemed to shrink around him, every inmate sensing the difference between arrogance and real skill. The older inmates who had been watching murmured among themselves, awe in their voices. "I've seen fighters," one whispered, "but nothing like this. He's perfect control. Calculated. Deadly." Even the guards, patrolling the block at a distance, paused instinctively. Something about the silence, the aura of authority, made them hesitate before entering the corridor. The leader finally fell to his knees, shaking, eyes wide in disbelief. I underestimated you," he admitted, voice trembling. I thought I was in control." Manny's calm gaze remained unbroken. He didn't celebrate. He didn't mock. He simply stood tall, every movement deliberate. "Control isn't taken by fear," he said quietly. "It's held by those who are prepared and patient." The gang had no choice but to retreat, shame and fear replacing every ounce of their previous arrogance. They scrambled backward, stumbling over themselves, whispering hurried apologies and promises to never underestimate anyone again. In the cell block, silence finally returned. The distant echoes of doors clanging, the buzz of flickering lights, and the faint scuff of shoes on concrete were the only sounds. Manny sat back down on his cot, calm once more, as if nothing had happened, the quiet eye in the storm he had just created. Every inmate in the block had seen it, and every one of them knew something fundamental. This man was no ordinary prisoner. Manny Pacquiao's deadly skill, hidden beneath calm and humility, had been revealed, and the arrogance of those who thought they could intimidate him had crumbled completely. And in that silence, one truth lingered, heavier than any punch. Underestimate Manny Pacquiao, and you would pay, but he gave the choice to survive if only respect was shown. The echo of Manny's movements still hung in the air, a silent reminder of the storm that had just passed. The gang, once loud, arrogant, and confident, now sat scattered across the floor, frozen, humiliated, their chests heaving with adrenaline and disbelief. Some nursed bruised ribs, others held their hands in front of trembling faces. The once unshakable leader remained pressed against the wall, eyes wide, trying to process what had just happened. Manny stood slowly, his movements deliberate and unhurried. Every step he took was measured, precise, almost casual, yet it radiated authority, a quiet command that needed no words. His presence alone seemed to push back the lingering tension, leaving the gang shrinking into the shadows of their own arrogance. "Remember this," Manny said softly, voice carrying across the cell block, calm but heavy with meaning. "Strength isn't about making noise or showing off. It's about knowing your limits, and knowing when to act." The words sank into the stunned silence. The gang members, still recovering, exchanged uneasy glances. No one dared respond, and no one dared move closer. Each one of them understood, instinctively, that Manny's power was absolute, yet he had chosen restraint. Slowly he turned, his eyes sweeping over the surrounding prisoners. Some of the older inmates nodded subtly, impressed not just by his skill, but by his discipline. Others whispered to each other in hushed tones, still shaken by what they had witnessed. "Did you see that?" He didn't even need to shout. Just one move and it was over. Manny's calm demeanor, almost unassuming in its perfection, contrasted sharply with the scattered chaos the gang had left behind. He didn't boast. He didn't revel in their humiliation. Instead, he walked toward the corridor exit with the quiet confidence of someone who had done exactly what needed to be done. His presence alone was enough to command respect. The leader of the gang, finally finding his voice, muttered under his breath, I didn't even see it coming. He's unstoppable." He slumped against the wall, defeated, his arrogance completely shattered. He had underestimated the quiet one, the one who had shown that restraint could be far more powerful than aggression. Other gang members, previously so bold, now avoided eye contact. They shuffled away from the center of the corridor, murmuring apologies and promises, though it was clear that pride had been replaced with fear. The lesson had been learned: never underestimate someone calm, focused, and prepared. As Manny passed by, the subtle gestures of his movement were enough to keep the surrounding prisoners at a respectful distance. He didn't need to speak again. The aura of his presence was the final statement, louder than any words or threats. Each step echoed softly against the concrete, a rhythm that seemed to signify controlled dominance rather than reckless aggression. Even the guards, who had been watching from a distance, paused to take in the scene. No one had called for help. No one had tried to intervene. Manny's actions had been swift, decisive, and above all, measured. The demonstration of skill had not been about violence for its own sake, but about asserting dominance in the most controlled, deliberate way possible. A younger inmate, still trembling from the encounter, whispered to his friend, That was insane. He didn't even have to throw a punch and it was over. The way he moved, it was like watching a storm calm before the rain hits." Manny reached the end of the corridor and paused, turning his head slightly to glance back at the group he had subdued. His eyes were steady, unwavering, yet there was no malice, no lingering threat. He had delivered his lesson: respect quiet strength, and never assume arrogance will go unchallenged. "Sometimes," Manny said softly, almost to himself, "the loudest threats come from those who are weakest inside. But those who are calm, patient, and prepared, their strength speaks without words." The gang, now fully subdued and humiliated, remained on the floor, silent and pale. No one dared approach him. Their bravado, once so apparent, had been completely dismantled. The rest of the inmates, witnessing this, felt a ripple of respect. Manny had shown that true dominance did not need unnecessary violence, only precision, focus, and self-control. With every step toward the exit, Manny's calm authority filled the corridor, leaving behind a lingering lesson for everyone present. Arrogance without skill is hollow. Aggression without discipline is weakness. And quiet strength, controlled and deliberate, is far more formidable than anyone could imagine. By the time he reached the doorway, the silence was profound. Even the air seemed to settle, as if acknowledging the presence of a man whose mastery went beyond mere fighting skill. Manny Pacquiao had not only defended himself, but he had also transformed the atmosphere of the cell block, instilling fear, awe, and respect simultaneously. As he stepped through the door, leaving the corridor behind, one truth remained etched in the minds of all who had witnessed it: never underestimate a quiet man. The ones who appear calm, unassuming, and invisible may very well be the most dangerous, the most prepared, and the most dominant of all. And with that, Manny disappeared into the shadows of the prison, leaving a humbling silence that spoke louder than any words ever could. The echoes of the confrontation slowly faded into the heavy silence of the prison block. The gang, once loud, boisterous, and full of arrogance, now remained scattered and subdued, their confidence shattered by the quiet but overwhelming presence of Manny Pacquiao. The other inmates had watched, spellbound, as the calm, unassuming man had turned the tide with precision, control, and an unshakable focus. It was a powerful reminder: strength isn't always loud. The world often celebrates noise, chaos, and aggression, the flashy display of power that demands attention. But true power, true respect, doesn't need to announce itself. It exists quietly, under the surface, in the moments when preparation, patience, and focus come together to create results that cannot be ignored. Manny's actions had spoken louder than any words could. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't boast, and he didn't overreact. Yet his impact was absolute. One precise movement, one measured display of skill, and the arrogant gang was humbled completely. Every inmate who had witnessed the event understood something instinctively. Calm, prepared, and focused individuals command respect naturally, not through fear, but through competence. Even those who had doubted him, the whispers of skeptics who had assumed quiet meant weakness, had been silenced. Manny had shown that restraint can be more powerful than aggression, and patience more formidable than raw force. In every subtle movement, every deliberate gaze, he demonstrated mastery over not just his body, but the situation, the people around him, and even the chaos itself. It was a lesson that extended far beyond the walls of a prison. In life, people often mistake loudness, anger, and showiness for strength. They assume that dominance must be visible, immediate, and overwhelming. But the quiet ones, the ones who appear calm and unassuming, often possess the greatest power. Their strength is measured, refined, and ready to act at the exact moment it's needed. The story of Manny Pacquiao in that prison cell was not just about physical skill. It was about control. It was about understanding one's own limits, assessing the threats around you, and responding with efficiency and precision. Every bully who had approached him underestimated the quiet calm, mistaking it for fear or submission. They learned too late that true strength doesn't announce itself, it simply exists, and when provoked, it acts decisively. Manny's demeanor throughout the confrontation left a lasting impression on the onlookers. The older inmates, those who had seen countless fights, nodded in quiet respect. Even the guards, observing from afar, could not help but feel the weight of his presence. He had turned a potentially dangerous, chaotic situation into a lesson on respect, discipline, and focus, and he had done so without unnecessary violence or aggression. For the gang, the lesson was clear. Bravado, loud threats, and arrogance may intimidate some, but they cannot withstand someone who is calm, focused, and prepared. The humiliation they felt was not just from being physically overpowered, it was from recognizing the futility of arrogance in the face of disciplined skill. They had assumed dominance through noise, but they had been defeated by quiet control. For the audience, the message resonates far beyond the prison walls. In classrooms, workplaces, and streets around the world, people often face challenges from those who shout, threaten, or try to dominate. The key is not to match noise with noise, aggression with aggression. True strength comes from inner focus, preparation, and the ability to act decisively when the moment demands. Manny Pacquiao's calm exit from the cell block was the final punctuation on this lesson. He did not gloat. He did not revel in the fear he had inspired. He walked away with quiet dignity, leaving a room full of humbled men, shocked witnesses, and a lingering sense that they had witnessed something extraordinary. Every step reinforced the truth. Respect is earned, not demanded, and true power is silent, precise, and controlled. For those watching this story unfold, there is a call to reflection. Ask yourself, when faced with challenges or threats, do you respond with noise, anger, or impulsive action? Or do you embody calm, patience, and preparation? The quiet ones, those who do not boast or demand attention, often carry a power far beyond what most expect. So, the next time someone seems silent, unassuming, or calm in the face of adversity, remember Manny Pacquiao in that prison cell. Understand that what you see on the surface is not always a measure of strength. Respect quiet focus, and never underestimate those who appear calm, because their actions, when necessary, can leave an unforgettable impact. And now, to everyone watching this story, take a moment to reflect on the lesson. True power is silent, and real respect is earned through discipline, patience, and mastery. If you understand the value of quiet strength and humility, type power in the comments. Let's show respect to those who command it without noise. Remember, strength doesn't need to shout. Calm, focused, and prepared people shape outcomes, earn respect, and leave lasting impressions. Manny Pacquiao's story isn't just about skill or dominance, it's about the power of being measured, patient, and precise. His lesson remains, never underestimate the quiet ones.